The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is one of the most enduring and complex conflicts in the world. It has persisted for over a century, affecting countless lives and shaping the geopolitical landscape of the Middle East. It's a conflict over land, identity, and security. The land in question holds deep historical and religious significance for both Jews and Arabs, making the dispute even more emotionally charged and difficult to resolve. It's a conflict that has claimed countless lives and generated immeasurable suffering on both sides. Families have been torn apart, communities have been devastated, and the cycle of violence seems never-ending. This conflict is rooted in the late 19th century. During this period, the region was part of the Ottoman Empire and both Jewish and Arab populations coexisted, albeit with underlying tensions. At that time, both Jewish and Arab nationalism began to emerge in the region we now know as Israel and Palestine. The rise of these nationalist movements set the stage for future conflicts as both groups sought to establish their own nation-states. The conflict escalated dramatically in the 20th century. The fall of the Ottoman Empire and the subsequent British control over Palestine added new layers of complexity to the situation. This was due in part to the British mandate for Palestine. The British made conflicting promises to both Jews and Arabs, fueling further tensions and mistrust between the two communities. It was also exacerbated by the Holocaust and the displacement of European Jews. The horrors of the Holocaust led to increased international support for the establishment of a Jewish state, further intensifying the conflict. Since the creation of the State of Israel in 1948, there have been numerous wars and uprisings. Each of these conflicts has left deep scars and has made the prospect of peace seem increasingly elusive. Each conflict has further entrenched the divisions between the two sides. The Six-Day War, the Yom Kippur War, and the Intifadas are just a few examples of the many violent confrontations that have occurred. The conflict is characterized by violence, mistrust, and a lack of political will. Efforts at peace negotiations have repeatedly failed, often due to deep-seated mistrust and unwillingness to compromise. This makes finding a peaceful resolution extremely challenging. Political leaders on both sides face immense pressure from their constituencies, making it difficult to make the necessary concessions for peace. Despite these challenges, there are individuals and organizations on both sides. These peace activists and humanitarian groups work tirelessly to promote dialogue, understanding, and reconciliation. Many are working tirelessly to bridge the divide and build a future of peace and coexistence. Their efforts, though often overshadowed by the violence, provide a glimmer of hope for a better future. Understanding the historical context of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is crucial. By examining the past, we can gain insights into the root causes of the conflict and the reasons why it has persisted for so long. This helps us understand the current situation and the complexities involved in finding a lasting solution. The historical grievances and traumas continue to influence the present-day dynamics of the conflict. This essay will delve into the historical roots of the conflict. It will explore the key events, decisions, and policies that have shaped the trajectory of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict over the decades. It will examine the key events and issues that have shaped the conflict over the decades. From the Balfour Declaration to the Oslo Accords, each milestone has left a lasting impact on the region. This essay aims to provide a balanced and empathetic perspective on this complex and tragic conflict. By understanding the human stories behind the headlines, we can better appreciate the profound impact of the conflict on the lives of ordinary people. To truly understand the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, we must travel back to the late 19th century. This period saw the rise of two powerful nationalist movements, Zionism and Arab nationalism. Zionism, a movement advocating for a Jewish homeland, emerged in response to centuries of anti-Semitism and persecution in Europe. The Jewish people yearned for a safe and independent nation. They set their sights on Palestine, a land with deep historical and religious significance for them. Simultaneously, Arab nationalism was blossoming in the Ottoman Empire, which included Palestine. Arabs in the region sought independence from Ottoman rule. They wanted to establish their own nation-state based on shared language, culture, and history. As both Zionism and Arab nationalism gained momentum, they inevitably clashed over the same territory. The Jewish population in Palestine began to grow as Zionist organizations encouraged Jewish immigration. This influx fueled anxieties among the Arab population. They worried about becoming a minority in their own land. These anxieties were further exacerbated by the Balfour Declaration of 1917. The stage was set for a conflict that would escalate dramatically in the decades to come. This would leave a lasting impact on the Middle East and the world. Following World War I, the Ottoman Empire collapsed, and Great Britain gained control of Palestine under a mandate from the League of Nations. This marked the beginning of a new era in the region, one that would be characterized by significant political and social upheaval. This period, known as the British Mandate for Palestine, from 1920 to 1948, proved to be a turning point in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The mandate was intended to prepare the region for self-governance, but it instead became a hotbed of competing nationalistic aspirations. The British faced the daunting task of balancing the aspirations of both the Jewish and Arab populations. Jewish leaders sought to establish a national homeland, while Arab leaders aimed to secure independence and prevent Jewish immigration. Their efforts to appease one side often inflamed the other, creating a volatile and complex situation. Policies and promises made to one group were seen as betrayals by the other, leading to a cycle of distrust and hostility. In 1917, the British government issued the Balfour Declaration. This was a pivotal moment in the history of the region, as it set the stage for future conflicts and alliances. This document expressed support for the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine. It was a significant endorsement that galvanized the Zionist movement and encouraged Jewish immigration to the region. The declaration ignited a firestorm of controversy. While it was celebrated by many Jews as a step towards the realization of their national aspirations, it was met with fierce opposition from the Arab population. It was welcomed by the Zionist movement as a promise of a Jewish state. Leaders and supporters of the movement saw it as a validation of their efforts and a beacon of hope for the future. However, it was viewed with suspicion and anger by the Arab population, who felt betrayed by the British. They feared that their own aspirations for independence and self-determination were being undermined. The Balfour Declaration, while acknowledging that nothing shall be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine, failed to address the political aspirations of the Arab population. This oversight would prove to be a significant source of tension. This omission would have far-reaching consequences. The lack of clear political direction for the Arab population led to feelings of disenfranchisement and resentment. It fueled resentment and mistrust towards the British and the Zionist movement. The Arab population felt increasingly marginalized and threatened by the growing Jewish presence. The British Mandate period was marked by growing tensions and outbreaks of violence between Jewish and Arab communities. Clashes became more frequent and more violent as both sides struggled to assert their claims and protect their interests. The British struggled to maintain order and control. Their attempts to mediate and manage the conflict often fell short, leading to further instability. Their policies often exacerbated the situation, contributing to the cycle of violence and mistrust. The legacy of the British Mandate period is one of deep-seated animosity and unresolved conflict, the effects of which are still felt in the region today. As World War II ended, the question of Palestine's future reached a boiling point. The region had been under British control since the end of World War I, and tensions between Jewish and Arab communities had been escalating for decades. The British, unable to manage the escalating conflict, decided to relinquish their mandate over Palestine. The situation had become increasingly untenable, with frequent clashes and growing unrest making it clear that a new solution was needed. They turned the issue over to the newly formed United Nations, hoping that an international body could broker a more lasting peace. In 1947, the UN General Assembly adopted Resolution 181, known as the UN Partition Plan. This was a significant moment in international diplomacy, as the world watched to see how the new United Nations would handle such a complex and contentious issue. This plan proposed dividing Palestine into two states, one Jewish and one Arab, with Jerusalem under international administration. The idea was to create a fair and equitable solution that would satisfy both parties and bring an end to the violence. The partition plan was met with mixed reactions. While some saw it as a hopeful step towards peace, others viewed it as a betrayal or an imposition by foreign powers. The Jewish Agency, representing Zionist leadership, reluctantly accepted the plan, seeing it as the only viable path to Jewish statehood. They believed that having a state, even a divided one, was better than continuing under British rule or facing further conflict without any clear resolution. However, the Arab leadership vehemently rejected the plan, viewing it as an unfair dispossession of their land. They argued that the plan favored the Jewish minority and ignored the rights and wishes of the Arab majority. The proposed partition map was also a point of contention. The borders drawn by the UN were seen as arbitrary and disconnected from the realities on the ground, leading to further disputes and dissatisfaction. It allocated 56% of the land to the Jewish state, despite the Jewish population comprising only about 33% of the total population at the time. This disproportionate allocation was a major source of grievance for the Arab population. The Arab state would receive 43% of the land, while Jerusalem would be under international control. This arrangement was intended to ensure that the Holy City would be accessible to people of all faiths. But it also meant that neither side would have full sovereignty over it. The UN partition plan, intended to resolve the conflict, instead deepened the divide between the Jewish and Arab communities. The plan's implementation led to increased hostilities, as both sides prepared for the possibility of further violence. It paved the way for a bloody conflict that would forever alter the landscape of the Middle East. The 1948 Arab-Israeli War broke out shortly after the plan was announced, leading to significant loss of life and the displacement of hundreds of thousands of people. The legacy of the UN partition plan continues to be felt in the region to this day, as the conflict between Israelis and Palestinians remains unresolved.